Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Nikki Gets Bored. I'm Nikki. Sometimes I get bored. When I get bored, I usually turn to learning because, well, you can take the nerd out of the school, but you can't take the school out of the nerd. I recently moved away and left all my friends. I thought, I bet my friends really miss my nuggets of education. I mean, who wouldn't want to hear me prattle on? Thus, Nikki Gets Bored was born. And I am new. And I am learning how to edit video. Guess who's learning to edit? I obviously need better lighting, so please be patient. In theory, these shows should keep getting better and better as I learn more. Something I will never get any better at is pronunciating.
Nikki, that's not the way you say that.
It's not?
No, you say pronunciation.
Pronunciate.
No, pronunciation.
I'm not good at pronunciation.
That's it.
Names, words, just this episode alone, we're going to go over Roman words, Chinese words. I'm not going to say them right. And that's okay. If you know the pronunciation of a word, especially one that I've just royally messed up, please feel free to leave it spelled phonetically in the comments. I know everyone appreciates not sounding silly when they talk, so it will help everyone. So thank you. 2020 brought me my first serious subject. What happened was I was bored scrolling through social media when I ran across a picture showing past plagues. Now, it showed how many people died from these plagues too. I think the idea was to show how little COVID-19 had done so far, especially compared to other plagues in the past. So what we are going to do is we are going to go through all of these plagues together in chronological order. I love it. You know what else I love? I love history. It's great. So I'll do the studying and you tune in for the story, and we'll all get to learn what happened in the past, what works, what doesn't work. And my favorite part, we can secretly laugh about those who've never learned anything from history. So the first plague we get to learn about, we're diving right in, the Antonine Plague that happened all the way back in 165 CE, which stands for Common Era. For anyone who's Gen X or older like myself, we have switched from BC and AD. BC is before Christ and AD is after death. Oh no, Nikki, that is so wrong. It's not right. No, BC and AD stand for something in Latin that I'm not going to try to pronounce. We're now saying BCE and CE, and that stands for Before Common Era and Common Era. So we switched. Back to the Antonine Plague. It lasted until 180 CE, and it killed around 5 million people. Sadly, about 70 years later, in 251 CE, it came back, and this time it took 65 million lives, lasting until about 266 CE. So if you think about this, 70 million people died just so you and I could learn how to handle a pandemic. Don't let their deaths be in vain. The emperors that were around the first round of this plague was, give me a moment, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus. Did you recognize the Antoninus for the Antonine Plague? And he co-ruled with Lucius, Cianius, Aulus, Aurelius Commodus Antoninus. Long name. Marcus and Lucius were co-rulers, and they are the last of the 5 emperor reign. So there were 4 emperors before them, and they are part of the 5th reign of emperors that were considered amazing emperors. And that's nice. They, like their 4 predecessors before them, they wanted to continue to expand the borders of Rome. Now, The winners call it expanding the borders. What the losers would likely have said was, so these people came in and killed a bunch of us, and now we have to pay taxes. So that's what it would look like on the loser side. That's just what Rome did. They expanded their borders. So the two emperors set out with armies in different directions to bring more prosperity and land to Rome. But instead, they brought back death. There are 3 different legends on how the Antonine Plague started. The first, Emperor Lucius, he promised the gods he would not ransack the city of Seleucia, which is in China. But he went on over to China and he ransacked the city anyways. And the gods released a terrible plague and illness unto them. The second legend is that a Roman soldier wandered into one of the Apollo sanctuaries, and since he was in the temple of Apollo, he opened a box or maybe a casket that was gold, and that released the illness onto everyone. And the third one is all blamed on Christians. The Roman leaders said the Christians are worshiping their one God instead of worshiping the entire pantheon of Rome, and that is what made the gods angry, causing it. However, Christians fared pretty well, and the Roman leaders that I'm speaking of, especially our 2 emperors, they died from this plague. And that's a little teaser. I'll tell you more about Christians and what happened back then. All 3 of these were religious legends, and of course, the religion is blamed on a lot of things in the past that we know is science now. But have you ever noticed that throughout history, people turn to religion when things get tough and terrible things happen? But if they had just stayed focused on their religion in the first place, a lot of these terrible things wouldn't have happened. Just a thought. Anyway, the Antonine Plague. It likely did come from China, and it was spread quickly because Roman armies fought in China. Well, then they went home, and then went other places, and it spread far and wide all throughout Rome. Yet, even without the armies, they were doomed, because the plague was also spreading along the spice road and traveled from China to Rome. The Antonine Plague is sometimes called the Galen Plague, and that's because a physician named Galen, he wrote almost everything we have about the plague. His information was very valuable. He wrote mostly about what they did to try to cure the illness, but he did write out some symptoms. And historians and doctors of today believe the Antonine or Galen Plague was smallpox. Now, smallpox, because of vaccines, smallpox was completely eradicated in America in 1971, I think. I was born after 1971, and I've never seen a case of smallpox, but I remember my grandmother talking about it once, and she made it sound really bad. But you decide for yourself. Here are the symptoms that Galen described. Fever, black diarrhea, and that means that there's blood in it. Vomiting, thirstiness, swollen throat, coughing, terrible breath, and exanthema, which I looked up. And exanthema is an oozy, gooey pustule, a large lesion in your skin that is leaking pus. It lasts about 2 weeks, and if you don't die from it, you get over it in 2 weeks-ish. But if you have it and you had it back then, you most likely died from it. The population just didn't have any immunity for smallpox. It was brand new at the time. And you know, COVID has been terrible. It truly is. I don't want to downplay it at all. But doesn't smallpox sound worse? I mean, at the very least, it sounds way grosser. So what did the smallpox do to Rome? It did all the same things COVID-19 has done to the world, but of course at a much higher level because so many more died and the population wasn't as big as it is today. So smallpox affected everything. The army was much more devastated. Agriculture, military, state funds, economy, art, religion, all of it wiped out. Smallpox took 70 million people. It actually meant less of everything. less crops, less taxes being paid, fewer things got made, fewer things got fixed. Prices went up because demand was high. There weren't enough people to fill the demand. The army was a hot mess. Even the strongest soldiers were just dropping dead from smallpox. And Rome needed their army. The army is their thing. They were all about expanding their borders. But then they had to leave soldiers to maintain those lands. And they ended up having to fill the army with slaves and criminals, neither of which could be trusted. They took men from the Germanic tribes that they had conquered, and I can't imagine your previous enemy being a good soldier for you. Lastly, they took from the gladiators. Gladiators were probably good soldiers, but taking the gladiators caused another issue completely, and that is the Romans became angry with their leaders for taking their entertainment away. Going to the movies or a good night out for them is going to see a gladiator fight. So taking the gladiators away didn't go well, but it does show humans felt the same silly entitlements that we do today, right? Like, how dare you take away my entertainment just to beef up your army and protect me? How dare you? On the other hand, I was pretty upset when I couldn't go to the movie theater anymore. So I suppose I am just as entitled as my Roman ancestors. A lot of Romans were upset that their leaders were blaming Christians for the outbreak because when all the leaders and rich people skipped town to get away from the infected, they left all their loved ones behind to die. Christians, though, they stayed. They went back into sick homes and they took care of people. They showed people love and care that even their own families wouldn't do for them. They also gave people a better afterlife. They could go to heaven instead of Hades. They live forever. They would see their loved ones in heaven, and because of that, Christianity really thrived at this time. There was another religion that became popular at this time, and if you'll allow me a sidebar, and of course you have no choice, this religion was called Mithraism. They also worshipped just one god, a Persian god, and it was more of a secret cult than a religion. However, I use the word secret very lightly because one, we know about them today. They can't be that secret. And two, they were paying the Roman leaders to be able to practice their religion as a cult. So Romans wouldn't have liked it, but they got paid for it. So when you know it, the Roman leaders were perfectly okay with Mithraism being practiced compared to Christianity. Go figure. Their god was usually depicted fighting a bull, which represents strength and rebirth, and they had their temples and caves to keep it more secret. Maybe if they'd come out of their caves and helped others, we'd have churches with bullfighters instead of crosses today. You don't know. Okay, thank you for the nice sidebar. I appreciate that. Rome was really devastated by these two outbreaks of smallpox. So many died that the economy was tanked, the state funds were drained, the military was filled with untrained soldiers who were just as happy to escape or fight back instead of taking any orders. It was so bad that historians believed it was the start of the downfall of the west side of Rome. The army wasn't strong enough to hold back the Germanic tribes, who ended up taking back all of their territories and many others. The Antonine Plague was the beginning of the end of Rome. And crazy enough, smallpox took out one of the biggest civilizations we've ever seen on Earth. What have we learned from this? How about smallpox is horrible? Vaccines are good. During a pandemic is probably not the best time to fight and go to war because yes, someone is weak, but also you're going to spread the disease all over your own land. So Russia, take a hint, right? Wink, wink. You should not be invading anybody right now. You're just going to get everyone sick. For that matter, what's the point of expanding our borders now? Can't we all just get along? Hi, divers. So what else have we learned? We've learned that if you want to start a cult and not have the government upset with you, that you should just pay the government. Maybe none of us do that. We learn to expect some sacrificing on our parts to help keep everyone safe. And when there's a global crisis, we should not individually act entitled. Being kind is another one. Being kind is better PR than hiding in caves or running away. We've learned that we should expect prices to rise until things are back under control. And if it's safe for you, get vaccinated. Maybe, just maybe, we could eradicate COVID-19 like we did smallpox. Time to wrap this up. I am a novice in all my studies. Though I use good websites to gain the information I get, and I try really hard to have everything accurate, I may have gotten something wrong. And that's okay. Because what I would love for you to do is, if you hear something that interests you, dive into it. Learn it yourself. Learning is fun. And we're adults now. We don't have to memorize dates and names. Just learning the story gives you a great lesson and helps you decide what to do for future situations. So get into it and don't take my word for anything. Jump in and learn. Now, I've noticed on many YouTube videos that a person has a shtick, something that makes them stand out. Like one of my favorites does her makeup while she talks, which is really cool. Well, I stink at makeup, but I thought my shtick could be a poem to sum up what we've learned today. So without further ado, the Antonine Plague, or the Plague of Galen, likely smallpox, spread far and wide after hailing from a gold box. Leaders cried, Christians hold the blame, and the leaders then died. What a shame. 2 weeks of fever, thirst, swollen throat, and coughing. Don't forget the exanthema, bad breath, and barfing. And it ran its course, though it would come back, but not before a darker plague hits, one in black. And that's a teaser for our next episode, which will be the Justinian Plague. Come back to hear all about it. I hope you enjoyed our time together. I love you all. I really do. Stay healthy, and I'll see you next time when Nikki gets bored. Thanks again for listening to my very first episode of Nikki Gets Bored. I just want to take a moment and say this really is for my friends and family who don't get to see me as much. But if anyone else is joining me, well, welcome, and I'm really glad you're here. I hope you enjoy my silliness. I also wanted to point out that I do know my mouth is crooked. I'm also having more and more trouble enunciating, and as you can see, my hand is shaking a little. I have ALS. It's also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, or if you remember the Ice Bucket Challenge, the Ice Bucket Challenge was for us for ALS research, and they've actually done a lot. So thank you to anyone who contributed to that. That was amazing. And we've got a couple extra medicines that don't cure, but they work a little longer, and they help us stay alive a little longer, because this is a terminal illness. It will kill me. But before it kills me, I am going to learn a lot and spread a lot of fun and joy and have fun doing it. And as long as I can, and as my speech gets worse and my muscles get worse, just bear with me. And I'm even recording a voice right now, so instead of a mechanical voice, it'll be a mechanical my voice, which is really neat. It's a neat process. So you might get little tidbits about ALS and how things are going, but you'll definitely notice pronunciation issues, which I frankly had before ALS. It's even worse now because my mouth is losing some muscle, so that's bound to happen. Don't be sad for me. I'm unbelievably happy in my life and good. Like, seriously, this is not for you to feel sorry for me. It's just to explain and maybe teach everyone a little bit about ALS. So come join in for things like that. I never know what I'm going to do. I don't know when I'm going to get bored and change subjects, but I promise to try to keep getting better, and I promise to try to keep making it a little silly. And of course, always educational. So thank you again. When I say I love you, I do. Every single human being in this world. I'm getting emotional. is worthy. And they're worthy of love. You are worthy of love. I love you. Stick around if you want to. If not, that's okay. I love you anyways. And I'll see you the next time Nikki gets bored. Thanks.